I'm Coach Tarek.
And I'm Vanessa.
We are your movement experts, and we are here to educate health and fitness professionals with the tools to create real change for and within the industry. My guest is Stu Gatherum, who's had over 23 years experience in the fitness industry, as well as high performance. He hails from the UK and has a vast and rich tapestry of experiences, both with football players, basketball players, and personal trainers. His business, T2 Fitness, has been a sensational success, educating fitness professionals all over the world for the last decade. In this wonderful interview, we really gelled and connected, particularly because we're both in the same space. And what I really love about Stu is his mindset, his mentality to collaborate. Stu is very open-minded and very progressive. And it just shows that, if you have the right character strengths and you have a strong mission, you could really impact a lot of people. And really, that's the message that Stu has to deliver. We touch on the importance of fitness professionals sourcing specific education. It's easy when you first start off as a fitness professional to kind of want to do everything. There are some essential items that a personal trainer will do. So if you say that the essential items is obviously once you become a personal trainer, you might get a first aid, for example. These are the essentials. But it is really looking at how you can find specific education. And we discussed that as well as the consumer. So the consumer is the clients of the personal trainers out there who need to be discerning just as much as the coach is, or the personal trainer is, when seeking out education. So we touch on the importance of the client, the consumer. You may be one of those listeners out there who are seeking out a qualified personal trainer. It's really important to know how to do that and to be mindful when selecting your personal trainer. Hope you enjoy this amazing interview with Stu Gatherum. Hi, Stu. It's an honor and a pleasure to have you on the Purpose Driven Movement podcast.
Yeah, pleasure's mine. Thank you very much for having me. I'm all good. We're getting a day started here. I know that you're kind of ending yours where you are.
Definitely, yeah. I'm in the Thailand part of the world and we're about 6 hours difference. But, this is the beauty of interviewing and being online and being able to be blessed to do this. So it's certainly a privilege, as mentioned, to have you share your wisdom. We share the same space, yet we have mutual respect and collaboration. And you've been in the industry for over 23 years. You've coached athletes from soccer players and in that performance space to the general population to fitness trainers. So you have a broad-ranging perspective or number of perspectives when it comes to understanding education, which really is the bulk of this topic, which we've termed myths from truths, and from a fitness educator's perspective. So we look forward to hearing your insights. And really starting with that, Stu, as to kind of where you'd like to begin in terms of debunking myths from facts.
Yeah, I think, thank you first off for the intro. It makes me feel like I'm 100 years old, like when you say 23 years in, and wow, yeah, it's been quite a journey. So yeah, that was some intro. So for me, I think the myths, and I think the focus that I was trying to put on that was how myths have changed over the years. So the general population, so it might be, and obviously now it's students, but it used to be clients and gym goers, will come to you with things that, they say as almost fact. And I think the example I always used to give was, well, if I eat fat, it's going to make me fat. Or if I eat carbs after 6 p.m., then they'll sit and they'll just turn into fat overnight and whatever. These are the rudimental things that we used to get given on the gym floor, and they were quite easy to debunk. Whereas I think people now, and particularly students as well, have so much access to information that we as trainers have to be really on top of our game. They're going to come to you and ask you about different types of things that maybe weren't a thing before. So I had someone recently on a course, and he said, I want to know your thoughts on reverse dieting. And, rudimentally, that means you're not just going to stop a diet on, Monday and go straight back to eating normally on a Tuesday. You have to kind of slowly wean back into a calorific surplus or whatever it might be. But it's got a special name now, So people come in with a little bit more knowledge a little bit more direction to where they want to be, but they might not be fully understanding of where they are. And that's, for me, is kind of the key to our role now, is trying to get rid of all the fluff. And that's kind of the aspect that I was really keen to talk to you about today.
Yeah, terrific. And it's one of those things where it keeps the trainer, the coach, on their toes, because with a more educated population, there is this potential threat, if you like, of actually maybe putting oneself in an uncomfortable position as a coach, because all they've potentially thought about in their journey as a coach is that a little bit of knowledge is okay. They could maybe get their certificate in fitness and off they go, right? And so this complacency, if you can talk a little bit about maybe the dangers of this complacency when it comes to education and ongoing education.
Yeah. I think there's two things to unpack, like complacency for sure. Once, and I've seen this in certain populations where you go, right, I have my certificate, I'm good. And there are certain like pockets of trainers that might go, for us, it's level 2 and level 3. So fitness instructor and personal trainer in the UK. I know that in like Australia, it's cert 3, cert 4 and so on. So you get this qualification and then you stop learning and you think, I'm done. I know what I need to know. I can train people on the gym floor. But actually, it's that, to me, it's the beginning. You've got your foundation. It's like getting your driver's permit. You're allowed to drive. You're probably not a great driver yet, but you're allowed to drive. You have all the raw skills, right? And you've shown a capacity to absorb the knowledge you need. So now you're on your journey. But it doesn't mean you're finished. So what's the direction you want to go in? And we can often get caught up in suddenly having a client base. We've suddenly got, 10, 15, 20 people that we see every week. We're earning money. So how do I take time off? How do I go and then upskill myself? And it doesn't always have to be formal education, but it could be reading. It could be listening to us. This is things that can help people to develop. And I think at times we get caught into the job and forget maybe I need to develop my skills still. And there's the other side of it where I think we can progress to a point and be so skilled that we can kind of go, I don't know, I don't even know where to begin with a client because it's almost so basic for them. So I see both sides where people go, I'm going to be one step ahead of my client base. And as long as I stay one step ahead of my client base in terms of knowledge, then, I'm fine. But then I also see the other side where you've got, 25 different certifications in lots of contradictory different aspects of the industry. And at that point, you can kind of go, well, I've got so many tools in my toolbox that I kind of don't know where to begin when someone says, I'm here to lose a bit of weight, or I'm here to fill in the blank, whatever the goal is. So it can be a double-edged sword, I think, the education side. But I think it's important that we start our career with a view of where we want to be. Now, you might deviate, but where do you really see yourself? And I can look at myself in terms of that example. I was hell-bent. I'm working with athletes, and that's it. And actually, I've worked with, 5 or 6 athletes, but the rest of my career has been, I realized very early on, actually what I'm looking for is a captive audience. I'm looking for people who want to learn. And that I attributed to athletes, but actually it could be general public. And it's all about people that want to learn. And that's what brought me to the education space in the first place. So where do you want to be? And what is the route to that? And that kind of is always a focus on our courses, particularly to say, this is a very beginning.
Yeah, it's terrific. And it's a great point, Stu, you make, because it's the strategic choices that a trainer will make, firstly, by mapping out what does it look like for them in the next 12 months, maybe 5 years, and what particular skills do they need to become better, not necessarily perfect. And I think you alluded to that point where, there could be a personality type that says, I'm not good enough, or when is good enough, yeah? And I think that's a good golden nugget of wisdom that you've provided there. So this first one is this mapping out of a growth plan. And you can add to this in a moment, and I think, do trainers and coaches take enough time to reflect, out of their busy schedule to kind of, look above the forest, if you like, or have that forest view rather than be in the trees? So perhaps you wanted to dive into that a little bit, because I think that mapping process equates to that growth plan, which is a growth mindset, which I think is very important.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. So like the you'll be able to relate to this. The route is never linear. So it's once you kind of open a door, and I say this to people quite frequently, if I open one door, I might think, great, I've got to go through that door. Then there's 12 more doors in front of me. And it's like, well, I could go in any number of directions here. So don't be afraid to go in those directions. But it's important to kind of go where, like you said, when is enough for right now? There are certain things I have to do that I might not be as passionate about. And it might be, business-based stuff in the gym that I'm working at. It might be, operating procedures and first aid courses or whatever that they need me to do, which are all valid and really important. It might not be my passion to go into the first aid side, but I need it. But what do I really want to do? And like I say, for me, that was always the athletic side. So now talking about the athletic side is something that I'm really passionate about. But it doesn't mean that I'm going to go on lots and lots and lots of different athletic training courses, because I need to get into the space and kind of hone my craft and understand the things that I'm interested in and maybe the things that I'm not so interested in. So on a personal note, I was never as interested in the nutrition side as I was the training side. So I know how important it is, but I'm less inclined to jump into that side as I am the performance training side. So it's looking, for me, the growth mindset is understanding what are the things that I'm really good at, what are the things that I'm really passionate about, and then what are the things that I can potentially network with someone who is equally interested and passionate and knowledgeable about in their field. So I think that's a big part of growth mindset too, because we can often get caught up in, I can do everything and I don't want to share any of my clients and whatever. And I think that it takes more confidence almost to let people go into another professional's arms for a moment in order to get, whether it's physiotherapy or sports therapy or psychology or whatever, than it is to try and hold on to them and do a lesser job. So there's a lot in terms of growth mindset, being able to understand that that's going to come back around to you. So yeah, that was a lesson for me earlier.
Terrific. Yeah, you discussed, or you alluded to it earlier, sort of just going with it. So if for example, it's the performance space, or if someone wants to become a group instructor, or they're wanting to do personal training, then what you suggested earlier, I totally agree with, which is to take that knowledge, run with it, but also maybe add a little bit more. However, leave those other 14 doors or so open, because there are going to be other options or possibilities. So it is about, rather than being maybe anxious about these many options, is to kind of hold these options, but at the same time, just run with it. And I think that's a very insightful point too, Stu, to this whole discussion. So this concept of mapping out the growth plan, but also having other options. Because as you said earlier, you touched on that could lead into someone then getting into the field of personal training, then becoming potentially a sports scientist, and then going, wow, I want to do my PhD, or, so it does lend itself to this non-linear, almost career pathway. However, for me, it's always been a calling. I never termed it a career. It's been a calling, and I think it's almost a paradigm shift. Yeah, if you wanted to maybe elaborate a little bit more on that is essential, I think, for someone to experience, and that may not be at the very beginning, but it could be through that process or that journey.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. So there's, in terms of like a paradigm shift, I think the phrase that I'll use in terms of like personal training, especially, like the first part and most important part, I think, in personal training and your success is the personal part. So what role do you fill for this particular client? And it'll be different for every client. Some will lean on you far more. Some just want the training advice. Some need, whatever, an arm around the shoulder because they're really struggling with fill in the blank issue or whatever. And your role will change based on the client you're with. So like for some, they really need to be challenged. And for me, like you said, the paradigm shift is all about looking at, actually, people are buying into you as an individual, as a professional, not your CV, not your certificates, they're looking at you first and foremost. So how do you keep the integrity of things and go, this is what I'm really good at and what I'm really interested in? And then at times there'll be certain clients that you might go on a course, and it might be a one-day course around a particular module or topic. And you go, actually, it's 3 of my clients that would really benefit from this, but there'll be 20 that wouldn't. So, or it's not really relevant for at this stage. So it's an application of this skill set to a particular client base. It's not suddenly I've got this new skill, everyone's got to do it. And I think that that's a really important thing to think about. The one for me was kettlebells early on in my kind of career was not everyone has to do kettlebells. Like not everyone's ready. Not everyone's ready to do snatches and Turkish get-ups and, you know, heavy swings and what. They don't have the ability or capacity neuromuscularly to be able to control a weight like that. So am I doing them a disservice with this, or am I just trying to show them I've got these new skills? So it's maturity in that as well. And I think it's the same with education. And I know that we share very similar viewpoints, but it's understanding where we fit in the student journey and what is an important role for them or route for them to take right now. So we can sit and go, this is the first year. I think if we do this course, go and get yourself some experience. Then next we can do X, Y, and Z. And I think those will be really useful for you and your aspiration. That might change, but this is what we're interested in. I could look at that and go, ooh, what's the most expensive course I can sell somebody and try to tell them how it's going to be useful for them, where I'm not really doing them a service anymore. I'm just selling courses. So what's the best route to market for this trainer at this stage? Because I know I've changed over the years and I'm interested in things now that I didn't used to be. So things will evolve. And as long as you understand, like those doors we talked about, that they're there, and instead of ignoring them and thinking, oh, that's scary, or worse, saying, I already know all of that, then I think it's just honesty in terms of where you are right now. That'll make you way more successful in the industry to be able to acknowledge those things.
Yeah, it does. Yeah. And as you were discussing that, some things popped to mind, and really the attitude and being open-minded is critical. I've always sort of philosophized and spoken to folk about that in the industry as being, once you're open-minded, it doesn't mean you let yourself be taken for a ride or anything. It allows you to look at opportunities and to potentially collaborate, you know, and that does, I think, take some maturity. One example that you alluded to earlier is the choices of education out there. So, and I think for education providers like us, you know, we collaborate, even though we've got products that are the same in some instances, we still see collaboration. And I think those choices that are there for the trainers need to be on behalf of the education provider, like you said earlier, to actually map out an integritous plan. And I can tell you early on, there were instances where I did sell programs that probably weren't quite the right fit. You know, I'd be quite honest there. And I definitely caught myself out at times thinking, hang on, I don't think that program particularly was good for that person. So the whole angle of then being strategic and working with them on a solution and actually helping to map out, I find very exciting, Stu. So I think there's something to be said about that. But on the flip side, maybe any advice that a trainer is seeking out a particular course, how can they wad through, you know, the many options out there, for example?
It's funny, I was talking to someone that works with me yesterday about this, and it's a case of, I will always ask the potential student, if they get a hold of us, like, what is it you're looking to do? Like, first off, are you looking for face-to-face only? Are you looking for an online blended style thing where you have some face-to-face? If we fit, then great, let's carry on the conversation. If we're not the right fit for you, then let me help advise you. Like, so I'm never going to I would never, ever say, well, that company's no good, or you don't want to go over there or whatever. Again, the integrity of that, it's a small world. Like, you don't need to be saying things negatively about other people or providers, but is that the right fit for you? Right? Look at cost. If it's too good to be true, it probably is too good to be true. Look at what the units they're going to cover, what ongoing support are you going to get, and does this fit what you need? Like, there are some students, like particularly like a lot of youngsters now, post-COVID, they're used to doing things remotely. They're quite able to do that. They're very tech savvy. No problem. Like, let me do all my stuff remotely. I might come to you for the practical assessments. That's all good. And you know they're comfortable with that. Other people, not so much. So, you know, for those people, it's important that they do come to a more nurturing environment and they're not left to their own devices. And it's trying to make sure that you have a conversation with people as best you can about those things. Anytime that someone said, oh, I'm going to go in a different direction, my follow-up every time is never like, fine. It's always, okay, that's absolutely fine. Can I just ask for feedback? Like, what made the decision? And 9 times out of 10, it'll be dates or locations, or look, they're throwing in extra stuff as a discount or whatever. All right, totally cool. And you've got an integrity in your price plans and whatnot that you've had to think of. So you can't just go, oh, I'll match it, because it's not always possible. So understanding where you've fallen down in that person's eyes is important. And then you can, again, you said it earlier, self-reflect. Like, did I do a good enough job of detailing the benefits? Did I, whatever? And this is just exactly the same process for personal training. I would take the same approach when I was a PT years back. It would be, what is it you're looking for, Tarek, out of this session or out of your group of sessions? What's the goal here? And if it's someone says to me that I've injured my knee, I'm coming back from such and such, and I've got rehab to do, straight away I'm going, that probably isn't my best area of expertise, but this person can help you. And immediately the trainer gets the right client, the client gets the right trainer, and between myself and the other trainer, that's goodwill. So at some point that comes back around. It forges a really good environment at the gym. And it means that I'm always working with people that I'm interested to work with and good at the job. So there's not to say don't ever step out of your comfort zone. But if it isn't something that it isn't for you, then network. Find somebody who will benefit the client and actually make that step. Not just say, this is not for me, good luck. Like, make the steps. It's going to forge really good karma for you going forward in that gym.
Yeah, there's a nice little model that I've learned, and it's like a quadrant. So if you can think of the upper left is like, where are you at? And then where do you want to go? Upper right. And then lower left is, how do you want to go about that? And then lower right is, who's going to be involved? Like who will help you even get there? So yeah, it's an interesting to go through. And that's also a reflective process that the trainer, the coach can go through. But also, Stu, I wanted to flip this as well now and talk about the client, like the client and the choices that they make to make the right decisions. They're not going to, it's not going to be bulletproof. Any perspective there on client's angle now versus the trainer?
Yeah, I think so. Like, it's if you're looking for a trainer, you could quite easily look at the bio of the trainer at it's on the board of the gym. A lot of those bios, though, are about the trainer's own personal experiences in terms of sporting aspects or whatever, and they may not relate. So what is it they specialize in? And don't feel obligated to hitch your wagon straight away to somebody who is just happens to be the first person you've seen at the gym. Have you worked with anybody in my situation before? So I'm looking at, let's go back to our rehab, where I did my ACL and that's been reconstructed. I've been signed off by the doctor. Have you ever dealt with this before? Are you the best person here to speak to? And be bold and ask those questions. If you get a great feeling, I've had this before, and I'll tell you a story. When I was young, I was 19, I think, and I'm working at a gym. And this is back when it wasn't automated. It was on a piece of paper. I turned up to the gym, and on my shift, say 10 o'clock in the morning, was so-and-so who is, 12 weeks postnatal. Now, I have no idea, right? So I'm researching early on before they've come in, because it's on my sort of doc for the day. And I'm looking at things that might help and so on, and what are the restrictions and contraindications and so on. And I had a great hour with this lady and helped her. The next day, someone else is booked in. Oh, she told me to come see you, right? So this is absolutely not my area of expertise. But now suddenly I've like a stream of women who are in the same situation, because they might have gone through the process together. Then they're in sort of toddlers clubs and all that sort of stuff together. So they met at different classes and whatnot. And now they're saying, you need to go speak to Stu. So it's not to say you can't do stuff if you're interested in it, but the client gets a really good feeling about you, then maybe go and put the skills in place that you need, the research you need and so on to do that. But the client should feel confident personally in you, and then also in your skills to help them. So I would urge clients to ask the questions like, are you getting the right trainer for the job? Like, is there anybody else here that can help you better? And maybe they can, but you don't sort of vibe with them. Maybe it's not fun. It's not an interesting relationship. So it's better off going with somebody who you do enjoy and then hopefully they can go and put the skills in place to get that work done for you. So that would be my advice for people looking for a personal trainer. There's a lot of us. There's loads of diverse skills. So interview them as much as they're interviewing you on a consultation, you know?
Yeah, that's terrific. Yeah, I think that's a great bit of advice is to, interview or actually know pre-frame before you go in and actually understand what it is that you need, and potentially want as well, right? Because there's a need factor. You use that example, of an ACL situation or whatever it may be, and there's a need there, right, to get into recovery, etc. But also the desires, like, what type of trainer would you like, and and I mean, be deliberate about that, right? Like, I think it's there has to be some gelling there, and oftentimes there's going to be a match once that person vibes, that sort of exchange of energy. So I think that's tremendous advice.
Early on, you can be like, I'll do it, because you might be getting pressure to fill up your client roster. But as a trainer, that's like something that we could fall into a trap of. But it's very easy to do that. And then you end up with a wide range of clients that you've got no idea how to help. But at least the gym's happy because you're selling sessions. And that's a dodgy ground to be on, I think. It's important, obviously, that we make money. It's important that we, pay the bills and cover the rent at the club and all of those things that the club needs of us. But at the same time, a club that is, again, has integrity will look at the skills they have on the floor already and hopefully fill in the gaps that they have. So they recruit the right trainers that they need. So if there's a need at the club for rehab from soft tissue injuries or whatever, find a trainer that fits that need and then employ them. And then there's not too much overlap, and that trainer can be successful at your facility without sort of picking from the same tree as somebody else. So it's there's loads of tricks, and you'll know these. There's loads of tricks that you can employ when you're a trainer starting at a club. I always viewed it as whenever I was at a new club, it was my responsibility to make a relationship with the other trainers, not theirs. And there's a kind of a weird standoff period at the beginning, like, what's he about? What's his skill set? Whatever. And actually, let's go and have a coffee. Let's have a chat when you've got an hour free. And I just want to get to know you and how I can possibly help you and what you do so I don't step on your toes. And that creates such a good environment, and it allows everybody to be successful. So I think that it's a longer game than just put a trainer on a gym floor, and if they don't sell within the first month, they're no good. That isn't how it is at all.
Yeah, it's a great point. Yeah, and it is that right fit, isn't it? It's like going into organization and then all of a sudden having, middle management go into upper management, and there's different roles, there's different expertise, and that's the same with, as you said earlier, personal trainers, rather than a broad brush. And this is probably some good potential advice, is to therefore get that level or that skill set that would differentiate you as just another personal trainer. And I think we need to transcend that just, because there's levels of communication now that comes into it. I'll give you a story, because you talked about the gym floor. When I was also 19, I was really pursuing football at a higher level, soccer. And at the gym that I joined at the time, I was just sort of learning the ropes on some of the machines and movement within the gym, because I was always doing sport. So the gym atmosphere and mechanics was a little different. Anyways, as I was doing it, there were quite a few trainers on the gym floor there, and there was one in particular who came up and said, "Look, do you mind if I just show you one thing that I think could help you here?" And I was like, "Yeah, like this feels better now. Like the movement, felt more fluid, and so on and so forth." And nothing after that. He just introduced himself. "Hey, I'm James. Yeah, I'm Tarek." And then, he connected and bonded. So what he did was he observed, he knew that I needed some help, and he actually went about and really worked the floor. As one of my mentors would say, don't just walk the floor, work the floor. So I think you're right. There are opportunities there to be really subtle and nuanced in a sense, and actually be courageous enough and confident perhaps, to show that skill that could help that person without trying to sign them up there on the spot, right? So
that's what they're waiting for, isn't it? Like, that's, you think it's the worst. It's the worst. And that's what they're bracing themselves for immediately. After you've given them some advice, is, so, do you want to buy sessions? And actually, there's no relationship here. There's no rapport yet. Like, take your time. But like, to springboard from that, like, the work the floor is a perfect way of putting it. I use the analogy of like your home, your house. Imagine walking into your kitchen, there's a stranger in your kitchen. Like, you'd be baffled, right? So the gym floor is your house. It's not the clients, it's not the members, it's your house. This is where you spend most of your time. There should never be anybody in there that you don't know, right? You should be making sure you know everybody, that you've spoken to everybody, at least a hi, right? And if you need anything, I'm here. That way, they're not strangers to you. So the next time they need something, oh, I spoke to Stu earlier, he was easy to speak to. I'll go and ask him to, it could be anything, to change the television channel, to turn the aircon up or down or whatever. But it's a relationship you're building. So, it's not the client's responsibility. It's yours as a trainer to make sure that you know what they're about on the gym floor.
Totally, yeah. That level of, let's say, service coupled with, how you effectively communicate can make the world of difference. Like if the context is, working in a commercial gym environment, or even in other contexts where, I've had boutique gym chains or gyms before, and, it was really about one particular member, Maria, who ended up becoming and staying with Primal Energy Fitness for like 8 years until she actually moved like locations. And her first, like for her, she pre-contemplated and then contemplated and then started to walk up and down the gym laneway. And she said she did this for weeks on end. And it wasn't until I decided to approach her and say, look, would you like to come in and just check the class out? I kind of thought, well, this is an opportunity. And I think and lo and behold, she came in, nothing was forced. And I think, again, it's how do we work in, whether it's the context of mapping out a strategic plan for a trainer for their education, or whether it's interviewing a client. It's, really important to kind of, be mindful of our communication and be a little bit subtle. Any advice on the art of being subtle and communication that you felt that served you well?
Yeah, I think what I would tend to do, particularly the advice is for personal trainers, really. Like when I was on the gym floor, it would be, you can tell when someone's a little bit uncomfortable. And if you've got you at point 0, then at point 100, and they're only come in like a little way, then it's kind of your job. If you've got the confidence to do it, to go the rest of the way. So if they're giving you 10%, that leaves 90 that's unfulfilled. So that's for you to go and really bridge that gap. Some people will be forthright and they'll be quite comfortable coming straight up to you and asking for advice. No problem. And you probably can read pretty quickly where they are in terms of their understanding and whatnot. But if people are particularly nervous and tend to shy away and be in the corners of the gym, or not such sort of dominant, prominent areas, then let's go and see if we can help those people. But what I would always try and do is highlight the simple stuff. Because a lot of the time, especially now, because everything is online and it's social media and all the rest of it, it's so easy to jump in at very complex stuff. So it's, people trying to do pistol squats before they can do a proper form bodyweight squat or front or back squat or whatever it might be. Very complicated exercises that take a lot. Right? So if you're trying to do those sorts of things, have we taken the requisite steps to get there? Give away loads of stuff for free. Right? Approach people on the gym floor, give them some knowledge, and then great, I'm Stu. If you need anything, you know where I am. I'll see you later. And that way, when they're bracing themselves for that upsell, you've left it. Next time they come in, and what I would tend to do, and this might be a bit of a cheat sheet, I would tend to write something down that was interesting about the people that I'd met that day. And that way, when they come in next time, if I've forgotten the name, because again, there's 5,000 members, there's only one of me, it's easy to remember one name. When you've got all those people, then it could be, let me go check my book, right? And they went to a wedding on the weekend. I know that. So let me ask them about the wedding, right? And now you're creating a relationship and a conversation around something that is not gym-based. It's always, my boss, I lived in Canada for a year, and the boss there said to me, I don't want to know what they're training for. I want to know what their dog's name is. I want to know, where they've been working for the last 10 years, what things they do outside of fitness. And that way you're creating a proper relationship, not just a superficial exercise relationship. So, this when you're with clients and you go past, 10 hours of training, they don't really need to be educating in, how to do a sit-up anymore. They know, and they might get tweaks and bits and pieces and make it more difficult or less difficult or whatever. But what else are you going to talk about for an hour? Like, this is a proper relationship now. So it's important. And I've had clients that have been with me for years. Like, they don't really need that much like technical guidance on stuff unless it's a brand new thing. We might be trying Olympic lifting for the first time or whatever. But realistically, they know what they're doing. You're laying out the steps for them. The rest of the time is dead time that you're having a conversation. So if you can't create that relationship, there's a lack of longevity there. So the important thing is being able to learn about them as much as you can. And that really is the key. So open questions are a big one. Give them a yes or no answer question, then that conversation stops. So open questions are really important as well. Like if they're asking, oh, I know this, and it might be, I know that I should be doing X, Y, and Z. Why is it you think that? Where did that come from? Or what other alternatives are there? Give them ownership of things, and they're starting to get more buy-in. So an easy example here that I would give on courses is, if I say to you, we're going to start our session, we're going to go straight into lower body. We're going to do squats or deadlifts. What do you fancy doing? And you're going to, straight away, you're going to choose one. Well, either of those things I'm happy with. So, but you've now gained ownership of that exercise. You wanted to do squats. You chose squats. Great. Let's go and do some squats. If I went, we're doing squats, you might be, oh, we're doing squats. But because you chose it out of the two, and all I've given you is two options that I'm happy with, we've got a negotiation now. We've got a relationship going where you're making as many decisions as I am. But I'm just kind of leading you to the right direction, you see? So that's kind of what I would tend to do. Keep them involved is key.
It's wonderful, Stu. Yeah, and that mental fitness skills of training is equally important, isn't it? We talk about like technically getting better or learning about the barbell or kettlebell or some other tool, but it is about that other side that equally is yoked, but oftentimes it may not be, when the trainer sort of has a predisposition maybe just to being technically the best, right? And so there may be some arrogance or standoffishness or whatever it may be that may inhibit their ability to actually draw in clients, which is interesting, versus having that true personality that comes out and then knows how to connect, knows the right words to say, the non-verbal cues, all of those things. And you touched on that very well. And I think advice for those who have the ears to listen to it would be to look at some ways to learn, whether it's NLP or mental skills training, and really take that as being a skill set that's for life, right? Like you said it earlier, it's the personal aspect. The other P is the psychology of it, right? The personal, it's psychology, it's making change for the coach and also for the client, which I think maybe you subtly touched on. This is more about how do you then get in flow? How do you get in sync in that session, rather than it being just another, set here, but make that real and alive and dynamic and meaningful. And I think that added layer of meaning provides the reason, the internal drivers for that client then to show up again. And likewise, the trainer, right? The trainer then looks forward. And an example, I'm hogging the space a little bit here off you, Stu, but I remember it, and other trainers and yourself may also resonate or have had this experience, which is having the wrong client, right? And I can put my hand up, and it was just awful. I'd trained this client 3 times, and I kept at it because it probably challenged me a little bit, but at the same time, the energy exchange just was terrible. And I still persisted, and it drained me. It really, doing 1 hour of session with that client was draining. So any experience you've had of that nature, and any maybe insights, to share?
Yeah, I think there's 2 things actually. I have had situations where I know I can't help any further than I have. So, people that are either not implementing the advice that you're asking of them, or so they're not getting any better from things, that it might well be they're consistently doing, certain types of exercise that really doesn't agree with them, but they're kind of addicted to that dopamine, that hit of, oh, I feel good after this class or this session, but it's not really doing them any favors. And there have been times where I've ended up saying that your knee or your ankle or your shoulder is just diminishing. Your movement's not getting better. I need you to go see this person. I'm going to refer you to this person. It's important that we do that instead of just trying. We can have the ego to kind of go, I'm going to find a way. But actually, are you helping? And that's kind of the key. The other one is, if you are not, a match in terms of your personalities and all the rest of it, then just like you said, you would have been dreading that session for the hour before, then struggling for an hour training them, and then probably brushing everything off for an hour afterwards, like getting rid of all of that energy. So now you're being paid for 1 hour, and you're really 3 hours into that client, that's not a good return for you. And it's hard. You've got to then pick up your mentality again for the next person. And it might be straight away. So you might have a 2-minute break to kind of compose yourself and get straight back into the next session. And if you've got a really challenging individual that you're working with, it's not vibing with you two, then again, maybe you need to move them onto it to someone who is more inclined to that skill set. The other thing I was going to mention was the psychology of things. If you think about when someone joins a gym, they might have preconceived ideas that we're going to all be, giant muscles or whatever. And the process, the gyms that I've worked at, a lot of them, you have obviously security at the front. So you have a turnstile with a card to get through. So that's one barrier. You might even have a barrier to get through to get into the car park. So that's 2. Then you've got to go to the changing rooms, sort yourselves out. That's 3. Then you walk to the gym floor and there's probably a door to get to the gym floor. That's 4 barriers that this person has crossed that are all probably psychologically quite difficult. And then they're expecting you to be standing there with all your muscles, right? Which is intimidating for them. So it's very hard to relate. Like a lot of trainers have never felt, don't know if that's fair to say, many people have never felt massive discomfort on a gym floor. I never felt particularly uncomfortable in the gym. I was quite comfortable. As soon as I was 16 and I started going to the gym, I felt quite comfortable straight away. I was quite athletic. I did a lot of sports, so I never really felt self-conscious there. But I know lots of people do. So if you can make yourself relatable to the client, and all of this is subtle, but if you're talking about nutrition, for argument's sake, and they say something and you kind of like clam up a little bit, that's embarrassing. So making yourself relatable, that we all like to have, a bit of cake or a beer or whatever it might be, it straight away drops the concerns they have about sharing sensitive stuff. So they're thinking that we're going to be judging them the whole way through. They're thinking that they can't say that they had pizza last night because we don't do that. We never do that as trainers. We only eat kale, right? And these are all things that they think. And there's your myth, right? We don't do that. So we're all human beings. Let's make ourselves a bit more vulnerable and a bit more relatable so the client can relax. And maybe we meet them at the gates once they've checked in. Let's sit for 10 minutes, have a chat first, and then you can get changed and I'll meet you in the gym. And that way you've diffused their nerves before you even start.
Yeah, beautiful. I mean, you've a couple of golden nuggets that have come from this, and there will be the show notes as well about Stu and certainly a breakdown of this episode, which is terrific. One of them was really highlight the simple stuff. So I suppose be mindful not to convey complexity and come across as an expert. Meet them where they're at. And I think that is just terrific advice. And that's literally and metaphorically, like meet them where they're at. So I think crafting the way to approach through simplifying complex things. You could be a very technical savvy trainer, but there's no point kind of speaking in those anatomical, physiological terms when you can really relate that. As you said, I think make the knowledge relate because it is relationship in the end. And as you pointed earlier, is to understand or know a personal thing about them, whether it's their daughter's birthday or something significant, I think is just terrific advice, because even I'm tingling, I'm thinking that's the personal aspect, that's the exchange of energy, and that's what will build more greater levels of trust and create retention and also no doubt loyalty and potential referral. So there's so much to unpack for those who have listened. You probably may listen to it multiple times, show notes, but Stu, it's been a pleasure having you on. Is there any final bit of advice that you wanted to share with the audience?
I think with an audience of largely trainers, just continue on your path. Know that you don't know everything. Know that the more doors you open, the more they are going to be in front of you. For every one of those 12 doors I said earlier, there's another 12 behind them. So be honest with yourself. Do you want to learn this aspect or not? If you don't, but you're going to get faced with it, who do I network with? And always try and keep that client at the center of your thought process. Yes, we have goals and desires in the industry, but always keep the client at the center of that, and you'll be fine. That's the most important thing, is we're here to work for the client and get them, not necessarily the results, quote, weight loss, muscle gain, whatever, but a healthier lifestyle. We're here to facilitate that. So yeah, so do that and reach out to people like us. I'm always available. I know Tarek can be the same way. If you got questions and guidance you need and whatever, if we can help, we'll help. That's I believe, a sign of a good educator. is that they're willing and happy to help.
And one final question that I always ask the guests is, if there's one thing that you'd change about the fitness, health, wellness industry, what would that be?
Ooh, that's big. I think, to be honest, I would say the value that we place in formal certification over informal CPD. So people, hopefully, are going to get a lot from listening to us for 45 minutes. And they might take away 3 or 4 things that impact them, like longer term. But they could go because they need some CECs or some CEUs or CPD points or whatever it is in your country. They go on a course that they didn't really want to go on because they have to get those points because the governing body is saying, well, you need your points. So I wish that we obviously I'm an education provider. That's what I do. So do you. So we deliver courses. But one of the things that we're doing quite a lot now is we're delivering informal workshops. We're delivering seminars around topics that aren't formal education. They're not structured where you've got an assessment and a certificate. So I wish that we could quantify that a bit more and place a bit more value in what it is to have a mentor instead of, well, I have to do this course or I have to go on this workshop or whatever. The informal nature of education, I think, and monitoring other trainers and asking them questions, it's all things that I think we need to value more in our industry. And if we could maybe drop the ego a little bit, I think we'd all prosper because we'd learn more about other people's ideas and we'd be able to pick their brains a bit more. The older I get, I don't care about asking anybody any questions anymore. Like, I'm very interested. I don't feel like it diminishes me. Whereas I think when I was younger, it probably did. I felt like I was losing ground to somebody if I asked them a question. Whereas I don't feel that way anymore. Ask away. And I wish that we probably all did that a bit more and place more value in informal CPD.
Wonderful insights. And stay curious and just keep in a position of being passionate and loving what one does. And obviously that keeps everything ticking along. Stu, it's been tremendous having you on, and keep going. And I'm sure there's room for another podcast and topic. And those of you who've listened in, show notes, you could follow Stu, and there's links and everything there. And Stu's bio, he'd be worth definitely staying in touch with and being a mentor to those trainers who are listening, who are new, who maybe have been seasoned. Hopefully you've got some inspiration from this episode. And we're always here to help on this podcast to enlighten those who want to know more about what it is to be purpose-driven in movement. So thanks again, Stu.
Pleasure. My pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being a part of our podcast community. We work hard to create content that we hope you enjoy and find valuable. If you haven't already, we would be honored if you would consider subscribing and following us on your favorite platform. That way you'll never miss an episode and you'll always be the first to know when new episodes are released. We truly appreciate your support and we can't wait to continue to grow and connect with you through our podcast.